Well, thank you, everyone. Glad to have everyone join us for the City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Mr. Brennan?
Present.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Present.
Mr. Vine?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Still on mute, Sam. There you go.
Mayor Benjamin?
I'm present. Thank you, ma'am. Rev McDowell, would you please bless us with a word, brother?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Oh Lord, for all of the things that you've done for us, we simply say thank you. We gather today as we wrestle with the issues and concerns of our city. And we simply ask that you guide us through these hazardous days concerning the issues with grace. We ask that in the next 30 days, that persons, as they make their way to the poll, to exercise their constitutional rights, be shrouded with mercy and wisdom. Bless this city of ours and all of those who dwell therein. We ask it and claim it in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Yes,
are there any changes to the agenda, Madam City Manager?
Mayor,
I'd like to make a motion. We amend the agenda
Yes, sir.
to add in item 31, to add hospitality tax and Saluda Greenway for receipt of legal advice.
All right. Is that what you're about to notice, Ms. Wilson? Okay, thank you.
thank
All
you.
right. With that motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm
Ms. Devine.
sorry. Can I just make, I guess, one small quick statement at the very beginning, since we don't do presentations anymore?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You want to do that before you adopt it? Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that
Right.
before City Council discussion immediately
Yes,
after this motion. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as adopted? I mean, as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
There's a second.
Second.
If there's no discussion, we'll move the previous question. The clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Put your
You're muted.
mic on.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair yields the floor to Ms. Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. I know we're still amending our agendas to be as brief as possible, and we're not doing proclamations, but I did want to just, number one, of course, recognize that October is both Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're going to be having the Mayor's Walk, the 14th Annual Mayor's Walk Against Domestic Violence virtually this Saturday, because we wanted to still keep attention to this. But I also, just as a point of personal note, wanted to recognize October is also Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. We are one of the only cities in the country, I know the only city in South Carolina that recognizes this month. And I know it means a lot to the families that we always recognize it. So although we're not doing a proclamation, I just wanted to publicly state we are still recognizing this month as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in the city of Columbia, and our prayers to all the families who have been affected by a loss of an infant.
I've always prided myself on the fact that our city council, us as a municipal corporation, that our city as just a community, not only blocks and tackles on the things that are most that we're supposed to do, you know, the clean, safe infrastructure and everything else, but the things that, Tamika, you always focus on, the things that recognize our humanity, our compassion. You know, just thank you for your leadership. it comes through, my sister. So we appreciate you. We appreciate you. I'm gonna yield any time I have on the COVID-19 update to Director Tinsley. And we had the privilege of having the 29th president of the University of South Carolina, Bob Caslin, with us today. So maybe we can get a quick sit rep from Harry, and then we'll have President Caslin. Come on.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to give Mr. Vine that time, but very quickly before Harry speaks, you know how proud I am of my entire executive management team, but one of them is celebrating 5 years with us. And as Mr. Vine said, we're not able to do our formal presentations, but Clint, here's your 5-year pin, like I normally do city council meetings. And, Clint teases Henry that he's no longer the new kid on the block. Like, he's never really been new. He just from private industry to local government, and such a blessing to us. So thank you.
Congratulations, Clint. You've been a godsend. The easiest anniversary to track. We can just track it back to the flood, baby. We'll always know when your 5-year anniversary is nearby. And I'm a big believer that obviously you can show leadership at any time, but leadership in times of crises is where real leaders shine. And that was certainly in the moment that that Columbia and the entire metropolitan area certainly shine from our collective work. But I'd be remiss not to highlight your specific leadership at that time. It made all the difference in the world and has continued to do so. Did you want to say something, Mr. Davis?
Madam City Manager, did I see a diamond embedded in that pin?
Well, Mr. Davis, you know how fiscally conservative I like to be, but it is a nice pin. No diamonds, but a nice pin.
Okay, I thought that was the first, but oh, maybe it's not. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, sir.
You watching the budget? You watching the budget, Sam? You watching the budget?
No, he just wonder where his diamond is.
There you go.
Congratulations, Clint.
Thank you, Mayor, Ms. Wilson, everybody. I really appreciate it. This has been the joy of my professional career to serve, and I just really appreciate it. And I hope I'll be able to for many more years.
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you for indulging me for a moment. And with that, we'll start our COVID-19 situational report. Mr. Harry Tinsley, Emergency Management Director.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Madam City Manager. Again, thank you for your time. I'll be brief. Some additional info is in your inbox as of today's reporting numbers. On a positive note, and I know everybody knows this, but our state has not seen a significant spike associated with the Labor Day holiday or the return of K-5 through 12 schools. Our daily case counts for COVID-19 in our state remain stable, averaging between 600 and 700 new cases each day. Currently, 12 counties and 63 municipalities have mask ordinances in place, and those are seeing significant decreases in case activity. As far as the current number of total cases, there's been over 1.5 million tests completed in our state. As of yesterday, over 5,000 were completed with a positive test rate of 12.9%. 693 additional cases statewide, new deaths. Unfortunately, there were 17 reported out, which brings the total to 3,275. Total case counts are 47,800. And in Richland County, we have 93 additional, which brings our case count to 15,025. We did see one additional death in Richland County, unfortunately, which brings our total deaths due to COVID to 236, or 237 with the additional. As far as our hospital capacity in our state, it remains pretty good at 77.87% utilization rate, and the ICU bed utilization rate is 71.07. There are currently 655 COVID patients hospitalized, 167 are in ICU, 87 of those are on vent. As far as our testing, Here at our locations at the what we're calling the old pardon and parole building at 2204 Lee Street, that operation has tested over 2,500 screenings, and with an 11.8% positive result rate. And the partnering with CVS Health and Benedict College, that location has had over 2,400 screenings done, and that shows a 13.1% positivity rate. And all this information is on our website and also on the DHEC website. So overall, the hospitalizations for COVID over the past 7 days have trended down from 729 to current 593. The recovery rate stands at 93.2%. So pending questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Director Tinsley. The regular reports, I find them very helpful. I think all of us do. It's good. Obviously, we're emotional beings driven by public narrative, but to have good and strong and valuable data to help us continue to inform our policy making decisions, it's very helpful. So I appreciate your constant solid work in that space. I'll go ahead and introduce President Caslin. No, it's been both a personal and professional pleasure the last year to develop a good working relationship with Bob Caslin, the 29th president of the university. The university's been really opened the doors wide open and worked to build a great solid relationship with the city since 1801. We've been locked together, and the relationship has had ups and downs. I feel very, very strongly that the future prosperity of the city is bright because of the partnership that we developed over the last year and will continue to grow under President Caslin's leadership. Obviously, we're facing some challenging times. The world is, the country is, the state is, and our community is. And we're going to have to figure out how to work our way through those together. But I'm glad that President Caslin is where he is for such a time as this. So I'll yield to President Caslin to give council an update. And Bob, it's good to have you, man.
Mayor Benjamin, sir, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here and honored to address all of you. It's really a distinct pleasure to be able to do that. I want to give you some initial comments, and then I'm going to ask one of our scientists or epidemiologists. You might have seen him on TV a couple of times, Dr. Lee Pearson. He's a clinical associate professor and associate dean in the Arnold School of Public Health. He's going to actually show you some specific data and some trends and things like that. But needless to say, it's been a unique last 6 months. We made the decision to close the university in the beginning of spring break in March. If you remember, we were one of the first in the nation to do that. We didn't understand the virus. We just knew that our students who had been all over the world were in contact where the virus was actually occurring, whether it was Europe or the Far East or even throughout the United States on the West Coast, coming into the East Coast. We knew they were going to bring the virus back with them. The best example I had was that the Princess Diamond cruise ship was what you can predict was going to happen to a campus, because the Princess Diamond cruise ship had what they call an R0, which is the coefficient of the transmission of the virus from one person to another. So an R0 of 1 is that one positive person transmits the virus to another positive person. The Princess Diamond cruise ship had an R0 of 7. And they said, once the students come back to campus, you can expect something similar. Of course, you know, knowledge, the lack of knowledge of what the virus is and how it's behaving is going to really make you look conservatively on what you really need to do. We made the decision right up front that was a risk that we were not ready to take, and we made the decision to shut down. We were highly criticized for that, and but that's okay. I think in the end that we did the right decision, made the right call, and protect a lot of people and saved a lot of people by doing that. Interestingly enough, even though we had closed down, since 80% of our student body lives within the city community off campus, 11,200 students actually did return to their apartments within the city of Columbia. And what's really interesting is if you look at the numbers of positives we had during that time, it was not significant. Even though the virus was working its way through the city, we did not see a surge within the student body at that particular time. And we attribute a lot of that to social distancing and beginning to wear a mask and realizing that there was a way to be able to protect yourself, and by protecting yourself, you're going to protect other people. And on top of that, if you remember, the entire city and state had shut down, bars and restaurants and all that. So a lot of the places that would be at high risk for transmitting the virus were just not operational. So we didn't see the big numbers that we saw when everybody returned in the fall. And it was a great lesson that was learned as a result of that. So we put a planning team together to look at what it was going to take to work to keep the university open, to deliver our mission, which was to deliver education through different modalities. And frankly, our faculty and our deans, provosts did a phenomenal job in making all that happen. Next was, how do you work your way through the summer? And then the harder decision and the harder plan was to open again. It's easy to shut down. It was harder to open. So we put a plan together that had 4 principles. The first principle was the health and the safety of our students, our faculty, and our staff. The second principle was to contain the spread, because we knew we were an urban campus, and we also know, because 80% of our students live off a campus within our community, that the possibility of spreading it to some more vulnerable groups was significant. And that would create a risk that we thought was unacceptable. So we really were very conscious on looking at how the spread would occur, whether it would occur within the faculty on campus or whether it would occur with some of the more vulnerable groups off campus. So the principle was to contain any spread of the virus from the community. Third, we had the mission to deliver our education to the standards and integrity that are expected of this university as a flagship university under the accreditation of SACS. And I think we were doing that. And fourth was the health and the well-being of the university itself. There is no shortage of losses of revenue and huge COVID expenses, and that can have an impact on universities, and you're starting to see that across the nation altogether. So the health and well-being of our university was important. And based on those four principles, we built a plan that had 3 phases. And the first phase was to use the summer as a gradual increase of bringing students back on campus. And they came back on campus in various groups, whether they were the athletic groups or the nursing students that had to come back for clinicals or whatever. But we actually ended up with about 3,500 or 10% of the student body that ended up being on campus throughout the summer. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot about social distancing, masks, how you achieve social distancing in the classroom, how do you have to reconfigure classrooms to achieve that. We learned a lot about student behavior. And it was interesting. I would just share with you that in almost every single group that returned, we saw a spike. Then students got, I'll call it this, they got their act together. There was peer-to-peer leadership that made a difference, and then they came all the way back down again. And so we knew we were going to get that spike when everybody returns, but we learned a lot throughout the summer. The second principle, or the second phase, was to bring everybody back in the beginning of the fall semester, but they did not have to, they were not required to come back. They can come back if they so choose to do that, and they felt it was safe and healthy enough for them to return. And here's the kicker, not only students, but also the faculty. And as a result of that decision, that put an enormous burden on the provost to be able to deliver every single class, both in person and either synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous means live stream online. Asynchronous means that it would be recorded and put into a library someplace and you can download it and review it later on. So every single class in the fall had to be both in person and online. And it so far has been very successful. There's a lot of concern about the quality of based on tuition money and all that sort of thing. We're working through all of that, but we felt that was tremendously important because, as you know, a lot of our faculty are in some of those vulnerable groups as well. And the third phase was that we wanted to reserve the option to shut the university down, like we did in the spring, if we felt that we got to a place where it was unacceptable risk. So as you know, by just reading the front page of any newspaper, the return of students was indeed challenging. And we experienced a lot of the same increases in student positives that you saw at Alabama, University of North Carolina, North Carolina State, Notre Dame. And as we were experiencing that right before Labor Day, I'm watching very closely what the other universities were doing. And I saw North Carolina, I mean, just with even less than 1,000 positive cases, they just shut down altogether, sent everybody home, everybody back in the community. And quite frankly, I thought that was, I mean, I just thought if we did something like that and we dumped our problem into the city of Columbia's lap, it would have been irresponsible. You know, this is collectively our problem, obviously, but it's a problem that we ourselves had to provide the leadership and the resources necessary to work our way through it. To drop that into the lap of the community and then tell everybody to go home. Frankly, since 80% live in the community, they're not going to go home, they're going to stay there. And without having in-person classes, they're going to have more time on their hands where we're just going to exacerbate the situation, not help the situation. So we resisted shutting down, even though there were a lot of calls for us to shut down. We elected not to do that. And then, you know, what's interesting, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, when Labor Day occurred, you had the long weekend, we anticipated we were going to get another spike after Labor Day, similar to what we experienced on Memorial Day. It did not occur. And the numbers dropped, and they dropped significantly, and they continue to drop. So Lee Pearson will show you this, but right now we're looking at, with 35,000 students on campus, only 33 active cases right now. Yesterday, we tested 350 students with saliva testing, and we had 0 positives. Our percent positive right now is less than 1%. And I think Richland County is about 7%, and the state of South Carolina is even much more than that. So if anything, we're not contributing to Richland County's positive, we're contributing in a positive way because our numbers are as low as they are. The spread, so far we're tracking about 2,450 students. The number is much more than that based on what scientists are saying on how this virus is behaving without symptoms to the younger population. But our spread of, at least what we know of, 2,450 persons on campus, only 9 of that number were faculty, and of the 9, not a single one can be attributed to a spread within the classroom. So said another way, the classroom ends up becoming a very safe place, and we knew that was tremendously important. It's important because it gives confidence to our faculty, and it gives confidence that we have actually put measures in place to protect our faculty and to even protect the students from each other inside the classroom. On top of that, we watch very carefully the hospitalization numbers, the emergency room numbers, the ICC numbers, particularly throughout the entire Midlands. And we're watching to see if those numbers are going up as a result of COVID cases. And we are very confident that we had not seen that. So said another way, that the spread that we're concerned about going into the community itself is something we watch very carefully and have not seen any evidence really that we have contributed to that spread, which really makes the case that the spread has been contained within the student body for the most part. And you know that within the student body, that they are not getting the symptoms that older folks or other vulnerable groups would receive. Matter of fact, up to 80% of them may not even know that they have the virus because they're either totally without symptoms or they're not recognizing the symptoms they have, like loss of smell, taste, or whatever. And of the 2,404 went to the hospital. 5 went to the hospital, 4 came back right away, and 1 stayed in the hospital for about a week and has been since discharged. And that's it. That's the extent of it. USC Aiken earlier in April had a nursing student, 34 years old nursing student with underlying conditions that actually contracted the virus during his clinicals and up there in Aiken, and he ended up passing away. So that's the only one of significant consequence of a student within the system. But here on Columbia campus, none of them, at least at this point, thank God. So add that to your prayers, and I would greatly appreciate that. So right now we're in a manageable state, and we are trying to understand why we're seeing such a reduction in the numbers. And obviously that can be contributed to student behavior. And I would also say there is a degree of immunity that's actually, we think, has taken place. We're doing some randomized testing right now so that we can look at antibodies and to see what percentage of the student body has actually had the virus and recovered. So, you know, like 3,500 is just 10%. So if you have some sort of herd immunity situation, you want to get up to 50, 60%. I'm not sure we're there, but we're trying to understand to what extent that the student body has received this, and you have some degree of immunity that's actually taken place. And then the third reason I think that the numbers are manageable is simply because of partnership between the City of Columbia and the University of South Carolina, Columbia campus. And I want to talk about that partnership because, quite frankly, it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for the mayor and for the city council for the work that you have done in putting ordinances in place, along with the governor I think it was the governor that said that will not serve alcohol after 11 o'clock, and the city ordinances you put in place for distancing in bars and restaurants and masks and neighborhood parties is obviously made a difference. We knew that student behavior and the social environment off campus was the highest risk of spreading the virus, and that played out exactly as we thought it would. And as a result, we wanted to address student behavior ahead of time, and we did it with pretty much a carrot. So a carrot and a stick. We didn't use the stick until later on, but the carrot was things like the I Pledge Columbia campaign. And thank you very much for doing that with our student body president, Izzy Rushton. That's very hugely accepted, and I think it had an impact, I would say, on 90% of our student body. So the other 10% said, now I'm back in Columbia, I'm back at University of South Carolina, I'm going to party, everything is normal again. And so you saw the other 10% because that was always on the front page of the newspaper. So you had to be able to deal with not only in a encouraging way to modify student behavior, we also had to do it in a way that would hold students who violated that accountable. That's the stick, in other words. So, and I would just say you have helped set the conditions for accountability. You set the conditions through the ordinances that you put in place, whether it was neighboring party or distances in bars and restaurants. And right now, I just give you the statistics that we have 2,778 students that have been referred to the Office of Student Conduct because of some violation of where we are with respect to the masks or whatever. And 56 of them are at a level of suspension. So that's the numbers that we have dealt with thus far in student behavior. That message has gone out in a big way, and it has made a difference. So I'm sure all of you saw the social media about Pavlik down in 5 Points opening up and then lifting the ordinance, and then you got students packed in there. I would just say that's the natural reaction that these are students, that's a natural reaction you're going to expect. So I think this is something that we have to address. If the ordinances become so tremendously important in modifying student behavior because they set the conditions of what's acceptable, what's not. And then, you know, for violations of that, we're able to hold students accountable. So I know that we had lifted the ordinance of room inside of restaurants and all that, and I understand, but now I got another problem on my hand. If you just look at Pavlik last night on how do we control that type of student behavior now that the ordinance is lifted, and we'll put our heads together and figure that out. Before I bring Lee up here to give you a scientist assessment of this, I do want to say thanks not only to you, Mr. Mayor, but also to your city manager, Teresa Wilson, to the assistant city manager, Missy Gentry, to the mayor's chief of staff, Pamela Benjamin, to Columbia's police chief, who's a great partner with our police chief, Skip Holbrook. And I'm glad to talk to you about that partnership if you'd like to and the questions you may want to ask. I also want to say thanks to your fire chief, Aubrey Jenkins, for his fire code enforcement. And finally, to Rebecca Best, our local government liaison, for the great work that she is doing in support of us. So thank you all, and I look forward to your questions. But let me bring up Lee Pearson right now from our underschool public health. Dr. Pearson.
Thank you, President Caslin, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to join you this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Madam City Manager, and to the other distinguished leaders of our great city. I appreciate the opportunity to join President Caslin in speaking with you this afternoon and providing a brief update about COVID-19 from our perspective as a university. I apologize for not having my camera on. I believe the host is in process of giving me that permission, but I hope that you all can at least hear me. And I do believe that Ms. Hammond has my presentation. I have just a few slides that I believe she was going to share on the screen. If somebody can guide me as to whether that's going to occur. If not, I can certainly make my way without them.
We're going to be able to share the screen, guys?
So we can definitely pull up the presentation. We thought they were doing it, but we can do that.
Right, thank you.
Great, and I have been given video privileges as well. So good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for that. As the slide deck is being loaded, I will say I only have a few slides and I will keep my remarks brief. But I want to build on the remarks Mr. Tinsley offered at the beginning of the meeting. He provided great data and overview of the status of where we are with COVID. I will begin by sharing that, of course, we know from a national perspective that the United States is approaching 7.5 million cases of COVID-19. And sadly, we have now surpassed 210,000 deaths in the United States. In South Carolina, we have our own challenges as well. We have now surpassed with both confirmed and probable cases 152,000 South Carolinians with COVID-19, and sadly more than 3,400 of our fellow citizens have passed from this virus. So the seriousness continues, as do the challenges of being able to mitigate the risks for all of our citizens. I will continue on. I do not see the presentation on the screen, so I'm not sure if there's challenges with technology. If so, I'm glad I'm not the only one that has those challenges. So I will continue to add that we are in a good position in South Carolina at the moment because our reproductive rate, that rate of transmission, is actually low. As President Caslin was referencing, getting that number below 1 is ideal if you're looking to control a pandemic. We have seen very high numbers, as he referenced, with the Diamond Princess cruise ship. We want our numbers to be below 1, and in South Carolina, thankfully, they are. We are currently at 0.77, and that is the lowest in the country. When you line up all 50 states and look at the transmission rates, we are the lowest, and so we are in a very good position as a state at this point, and we are all thankful for that, to be able to know that our rate of transmission is reduced and that we do not see the type of community spread that we were certainly witnessing earlier this year and throughout the late summer. The positivity rate has gone down, as Mr. Tinsley referenced, with recent test results were vacillating between 11 and 12%. We want as many people as possible to be tested. We want to make sure that folks are availing themselves of those resources, and we're grateful for the partnership with the city and making sure that all of our residents have access to that. As the president underscored, we are fortunate that we have good news to report in terms of case numbers. And we know that across South Carolina, the daily cases per 100,000 are right at 15.6. Thank you very much. So if we can go back to the earlier slides, please. Thank you very much. It's nice to have tech support. I promise there are only 9 slides, so don't be nervous. But as you see on this first slide, as I was referencing, we're in pretty good standing in regard to our reproduction rate, but also the daily case per 100,000. As I mentioned, in South Carolina, it's down to 15.6. In Richland County, it's 15.8. So if you look at the graph on the right side, you see those two numbers are coming together. That is a huge improvement for Richland County. That blue line has come down. It was terribly high in recent weeks. And so we are all pleased to see that number coming down. If you look at the small map of South Carolina on the left side of the screen, you see that there are 13 counties that are colored red. And that means those are counties that are either facing an imminent outbreak or currently have an outbreak. The good news of this particular map is that Richland County was red last week and has now been moved to orange status, which means a heightened level of alert, but certainly an improvement as reflected by the numbers. So if we scroll up to the next slide, please, you'll see that in terms of the recognition and the so-called RT status. And South Carolina is that small green bar on the very left of the screen. You may not be able to see the abbreviation for our state, but it is there, and we are proud of that because that means that our efforts are paying off. And certainly that is reflective of the strong leadership in the city to have face covering ordinance, to have taken the precautions and the steps towards mitigation that you have as city leaders. That has benefited us tremendously. And we are in a very good position currently. But we want to make sure that we don't expend that good fortune and that we pay attention to what's happening in the rest of the country. Currently, we have 33 states that have increasing case numbers. We have 35 states with increasing rates of hospitalization. And it's very important that we remind ourselves not only of our current good fortune, but of the ongoing threat that remains from this virus, and that, as President Kaslan would say, that we remain vigilant and continue to reinforce the mitigation protocols that we know are working. So as we move to the next slide, this really reinforces what Mr. Tinsley was saying earlier, and his numbers are likely one day more current than mine. Mine are based on yesterday's information, but that's maybe old news. But the real news here is that our hospital status is very good, that we have ample capacity to meet any potential need, particularly in our ICUs and with ventilator capacity, and that the Midlands hospital systems have adequate capacity right at 78.6%. So moving to the next slide, I will just underscore that it's important for us in a global pandemic to always think about what's happening not only here at home, but around the world. We are now above 35 million individuals who have been diagnosed with coronavirus around the world, and sadly over 1 million deaths. The challenge of coronavirus around the world is not over. In fact, in Europe, we are seeing very strong signs of a second wave. England, Spain, Italy, Germany are all seeing weekly case totals that equal what they saw back in March. So clear signs of a second wave there. Here closer to home in the United States, we're seeing spikes in neighborhoods in New York City where they had seen tremendous progress. They had 9 zip codes in the metropolitan area yesterday that had to close schools, send students online because they are seeing increasing numbers. And so we are certainly not out of the woods. One of the things that I would highlight here is that we do track here at the university, and certainly through DHEC and others in the public health field, watching the numbers of the 14-day change. And this is based on the 7-day rolling averages that we track here and around the world. These numbers have been in a negative trend in recent weeks, but they are actually turning positive. So you see 3 of the 4 indicators are in the positive category. And that's a sign that we do see increasing concern, increasing caseload, and deaths. And so it's important that we remain very vigilant. Moving on to the next slide. This gets us much closer to home and gives you a glimpse of our university dashboard, which hopefully all of you have viewed on our COVID website. We do update this every Friday and every Tuesday, and so there will be an update coming this afternoon. This is the dashboard from last Friday. I will point out, as President Kaslan underscored, the good news here is that as of last Friday, we had 39 active cases. and a 1.4% positivity rate, which is exceptionally low, and we're very proud of that. On the bottom left of the screen, you see what we call our campus alert matrix. These are the 11 criteria that we watch very closely. The President Kaplan, the Provost, and our cabinet are monitoring in terms of the conditions on our campus. And fortunately, we are in the green zone, which we call the new normal. And so that means that most of our indicators are in a very acceptable range. The two that were listed there as being in the low category, or at least increased concern, were our mitigation behaviors and then the campus impact on operations, largely driven by fear and anxiety that may exist on our campus in terms of individual or collective risk. President Kaplan underscored the concerns around mitigation behaviors. It's important, certainly as we see improving numbers, that we don't take that as guidance to take our foot off the gas or to relax our standards in terms of our mitigation protocols. We've got to remain vigilant so that we can remain in a very good position. And so overall, as the President noted, we have had over 2,400 cases since August the 1st. Nearly 2,400 have recovered, and we're grateful for that. As we move to the next slide, you'll actually see some of the data behind our dashboard, and this is data through yesterday. And this will inform the update to the dashboard that we will be posting later today. This provides you a daily breakdown of where we stand with our total cases, where those individuals were tested, whether it's on or off campus. It gives an indication of the active status of our groups, whether they're staff, faculty, or students, and then our new daily case totals. As you will see, we are just under 2,500 total cases now with 2,494. We have 38 active cases. That is one less than the dashboard that I showed you a moment ago. I will draw your attention to the number at the bottom of the blue column that has the asterisk beside it. It shows 69 new cases posted yesterday. I am grateful and relieved to report that we only had 4 new cases, but as noted at the bottom of the slide, we posted 65 test results that were actually holdovers from late August, early September, where individuals were tested off campus. They received contact tracing and appropriate treatment, but by the time they uploaded their actual test results into our system, they were posted as a batch yesterday. And so don't let that number of 69 concern you. There were only 4 new cases, and we are grateful for that. But this gives you a clear sense of the numbers that we're tracking. In an effort at transparency in our partnership with the city, we wanted to make sure that, that we share the numbers behind the dashboard. I can also verify for you that that matrix that has 11 items has a tremendous amount of detail. Most of those criteria have many sub-criteria that President Kaplan and the cabinet track very closely. And so there is a lot of information behind our alert level and our alert matrix. And so wanted to share that with you today. As we move to our final slides, there are a couple of indicators on the next slide of our case demographics. You see the race, ethnicity, and gender breakdown for those that have tested positive. And I would note a couple of things about this. One is that it's predominantly women more than men, and that is because the women are coming out to be tested. As men often do, avoid healthcare. We are having challenges in encouraging our male students to participate in testing, and we have a new approach to address that, along with the imbalance in the race and ethnicity. It is predominantly Caucasian women that are testing positive, in large part because we are not seeing participation from the minority populations on our campus. And we know how important it is that all demographics be represented in testing. And so President Kaplan's direction, we have implemented a randomized testing strategy on our campus that we began yesterday, where we are actually drawing on a comprehensive sample of students on our campus. We are requesting 3,750 students a week participate in testing. So we are sending out email invitations to students to participate in testing, and we are oversampling to ensure that we get proper representation across the demographic groups, and that we are getting a good representative sample of our campus to ensure that if there is virus out there, that we find it in the population, that we isolate those who are positive, that we quarantine those who are exposed, and that we contain the virus not only on our campus, but ensure that we contain any potential for spread to the surrounding community. The next slide also speaks to the case demographics, and you see, not surprisingly, that most of those who are testing positive are in the college age group. That 26 and over category might represent some of us who are faculty and staff who have tested, but you also see that the vast majority of our cases, 98%, are students, with a very small number that are staff or faculty. As President Caslin said, we're very proud of that because we've worked very hard to ensure that our classrooms are among the safest places to be, and with proper face covering protocols, that we have frequent environmental cleanings, that we have effective distancing, and that we've created a safe environment for our faculty and students, and that we are enacting those protocols campus-wide to ensure that staff and any visitors to our campus remain safe as well. And the last slide that I have underscores not only my appreciation, but the collective appreciation of our university leadership in the partnership with the city. So if we're able to advance to that last slide, it just simply underscores the value and meaning of this partnership. When we first started our planning efforts back in the beginning of April, which seems like years ago, President Caslin asked me the question of what makes us unique as a university in addressing these challenges. And one of the first things that I mentioned to him is that we are an urban campus in a racially diverse city, that we have to be mindful of the health disparities that exist in the communities that surround our campus, and that as we work to protect our own campus community, we have to be equally vigilant in making sure that our community citizens are protected as well. And as a resident of downtown Columbia, that's very important to me, to my neighbors, and to me as a representative of the university, that we are doing all that we can to keep the entirety of Columbia healthy and safe. And so that involves proactive communication and information sharing, just as we're doing today, but also reflects the several meetings that I have been a part of with city leadership since the spring. And I know President Caslin and Mayor Benjamin have been working in close partnership, as have others on this call, with other leaders at the university. And so we are all grateful for that partnership. The collaborative approach to problem solving, as President Caslin mentioned, when it came to the face covering ordinance, you were very proactive. When it's come to diffusing challenging situations with student gatherings, you have been our solid partner in that, and we are forever grateful for that. We also know that taking strategic steps towards prevention is critical. The ordinances have been a vital link in that, and knowing that we have a strong ally with city leadership is just an extraordinary benefit, and one of the other things that makes us truly unique as a university. Not every campus can brag that they have that kind of partnership. I had the privilege of hosting a national tabletop exercise for major universities around the country. And when I was able to talk about the partnership that we have with the city, it invoked great jealousy from other universities. So we are fortunate to have a truly productive town-to-gown connection with the city of Columbia and the University of South Carolina. I am grateful for that. I know that President Caslin is as well, and I thank you again for your time today. I'm happy to join President Caslin in answering any questions that you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Lee. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, let me turn it over to you for any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, President Caslin. Dr. Pearson, thank you so much. I see your hand up, Mr. Duval, then I got Ms. Devine and Mr. Rickenman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. President Caslin and Dr. Pearson, thank you for the great presentation. I do want to congratulate President Caslin on producing the type of cooperation that we need from the University of South Carolina during this pandemic. You've got 35,000 people in the midst of our city, and whatever happens to those 35,000 happens to all of the 135,000 that we have in our borders. So it's very important for us to have that cooperation. I do have some concerns about the number of tests. If I am correct, when you brought the main part of the student body back in late August, you required them to be tested, everyone to be tested. And we had 1,400 or 1,500 positive tests. So we had 12 Greek villages shut down. And now I think you said the number was 33. That's a little bit hard to swallow that you have been that productive in reducing the number of cases. Is it a result of the lack of testing? Do you have any plans to go back for massive testing? I heard the presentation say something about a sampling, but are we going to have any more mass testings that would produce maybe more positive results? Because these students are going down to Pavlov and other places, and I'm sure that they are spreading the virus left and right. And I would like to close by saying one of the things that I think needs to happen between the university and the city is more activity from the university police. Your offices have statewide constable licenses. They can go anywhere in the state and issue tickets, unlike our offices that are restricted to the city of Columbia. We spend a tremendous amount of CPD manpower in the 5 Points area. The 5 Points area is your students' recreation area, and USC police should be outside of Pavlov telling those students to mask up, to scatter out, and to go home and behave themselves. So I would challenge you to do even more with your USC police to help the city of Columbia make these students modify their behavior.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilman. I appreciate your questions. I'm not sure which one to answer first. So let me start with the testing. So we did. We were one of 4 universities in America, in the nation, to be able to have our own testing and laboratory capacity to test. And we did that with the saliva test, which was, quite frankly, amazing that we were able to accomplish that. We were able to get the certifications just barely before students returned. And so the first couple of weeks they were returned, we were testing about 1,000 a day. And that was about the capacity of that laboratory. That was really put together, and they had the authority from the FDA and CLIA, which were our certification agencies. But only one person was certified to be able to run the laboratory. That's the only one we were able to get through the protocol. Because we had to assemble it as quickly as we did. That person became sick right before Labor Day, and you saw that in the news. So we were wrongly accused, and I really take offense to it, to intentionally drop our testing. So we had to drop the testing, quite frankly. So I mean, we're one of 4 universities in America that was able to test to the level that we were within our own resources. When Dr. Burke came to visit, she applauded our efforts, and she applauded the fact that we are using our own resources to be able to do that. So after Labor Day, we were able to get that person healthy again to run the laboratory. We ran it for about a week at a reduced rate, and now we're back up to a capacity of 1,000. But right now, a little bit of what's going on our campus is similar to what's going on in your city, and that is testing fatigue. When you had HHS come down here with the 2 testing capacities that had 5,000 capacity a day, I mean, your city in the Richland County was doing less than 200 with a 5,000 capacity. So you have this issue called testing fatigue. So how do you motivate people to get tested and things of that sort? So we're in the process of doing that. We have some incentives. We got some competitions. We're going to put T-shirts out and all that sort of thing. But the thing that's constant through all of this is not the number of tested. It is the percent positive. And the percent positive right before Labor Day was 17 to 18%. The percent positive yesterday was less than 1%. So that is that's the one constant. So if you want to compare pre-Labor Day to post-Labor Day. That's probably the one constant that you want to do it. So the massive testing that you are recommending, you don't have to do that right now. We were going to do that for Thanksgiving when people go home for Thanksgiving. You don't have to do it right now because you could take a sampling, and if you have the right random sampling, that's the 3,500 that we are doing the random testing. That will give us a better perspective of where we are with respect to positive cases and the like. I would also say this, that we believe in science and science enforcing science. We also have this thing called the environmental wastewater testing process. And what that does is you go into the sewage system and you scoop out poop, and then you test it. And by testing it, you get an assessment of what building that came from and what is the level of toxic, you know, of the virus. If you have a high level of the virus in that particular building, then you know you have some problems. The issue, not the issue, the good thing about the environmental testing, the wastewater testing, is it doesn't lie. You can't manipulate it. It's automatic. It just tells you exactly what's going on in that particular building. So we have 12 of these go on every single day. So we constantly rotate across the entire campus with 12 separate tests in 12 separate buildings every single day. And that's what they're doing right now. And as a result of that, we're seeing significant drops in the virus within waste, within the poop. It's a significant level. So what it's doing is it's reinforcing the fact that our percent positives are as low as they are. So the virus within the community has decreased significantly. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods. We must remain vigilant, but we have a situation that we are experiencing low test positive percentages, and science is reinforcing that with the environmental test at the same time. And then we're going back to reinforce it with the random testing for each week, doing 3,500. And we're also going to do random testing of the antibody. This is something that's also very important because I believe this is part of the reason why we're seeing such significant drops in numbers, is that there is some degree of immunity that's occurring within the student population. And the antibody will tell us a better idea of how many students have had the virus and have recovered. And that will give us a better indication of what kind of immunity is actually taking place. And so we're going to look at that as well. As far as the massive testing, we are going to encourage a massive test right before the kids leave, before Thanksgiving when they go home. We want them to go home. We want them to go back to mom and dad, to the family, knowing that they're negative, and what's important is that this age group has about 5% that don't exhibit any symptoms whatsoever. And, you know, we want to find those 5%. That was the 1,450 that you had referred to when they first returned. That was less than 5% that we knew was out there that was going to transmit the virus, but we wanted to identify right away with the testing on return. And then we're going to require mandatory testing before they come back in January again, which will be a mass testing and that. So that's kind of a summary of the testing process, where we are, how science is working on all of this. And before I go into the police question that you asked, do you have any questions or any follow-on questions with respect to testing?
No, sir. I think that's a very good explanation. Okay.
On the police, I would just say that I've watched this very carefully, and I'm watching our police chief Wishnick and Chief Holbrook, and the working relation that they have. And I know Chief Holbrook is on the call here, and I would welcome him to chime in as he feels he needs to. But I know they're in steady communication. We support their request for assistance when they're responding to incidents at locations off campus that involve our students. It's my understanding they have an agreement that when they see something, whether it's at 5 Points or elsewhere within the city of Columbia, on how they're going to respond and how the University of South Carolina Police will respond in support. It's my understanding that that agreement and it worked. It worked the other day, and it works anytime there is an issue there. At least that's what I'm being informed. To have I'll be glad to put our police down there outside of 5 Points and directing student behavior and things like that. But I would like to do that with Chief Holbrook first to make sure that that's what he expects of us and that's what he wants. So let's have that conversation and then we'll see where we can go. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but please let me know.
Thank you very much. Ms. Devine and Ms. Berkman.
Mr. Mayor, mine was the testing question, so President Caslin has already answered that. Thank you.
All right, super. Daniel?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Mr. President, for taking the time today. Hopefully we can do this more often. It's been a while since we've had a president before us. I have several questions, and I'm actually going to email the questions out because they were a response. Your office was kind enough to send us some information, but after hearing your talk today, I think a couple of things that I'm curious about. One is with such a large population that live off campus, what is the university providing for entertainment and opportunities for those off-campus kids, let alone the kids on campus, because it seems like a lot of the places on campus are closed in the evening, especially on the weekends. And as we go through that, I do think that's important to be part of it. As from the studies that y'all are doing, I think this information is very good, and it'd be great to continue to hear that, especially around immunity. I would just ask, what's all included in that, and if you could share some more detail. Our sporting events included that as well. I think I've heard from the university several times pointing out businesses, people waiting in line, sharing pictures, and all of those things happened the other weekend as well at the football game and at testing sites and getting meals and on campus and other places. And so I want to make sure that when we're discussing preventative measures and working together, that it is equally distributed around, that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I think it's very important because, I think I heard a lot of emphasis put on 5 Points, which is a very important entertainment district, but also a lot of people's lives and businesses, especially small businesses who've had a long-term relationship with the university and the students. And so I want to make sure that, you're also supplying alternatives and opportunities for the on-campus and off-campus kids at the other hours. And that, I guess I would ask, with your studies, if you're doing contract tracing, can you show me or anybody else down the road that a group at a bar in 5 Points is spreading it or compounding the issue worse than all the people standing in line at the game or going to the game? And so I think we need to make sure that we're working together and not alienating one part of the community versus the other, and making sure that it continues to be a work of partnership. And then I think the last comment or question really for you is, I'd love to see an opportunity to bring USC students and the city together on a working committee to deal with things moving forward, everything. And when I say that, I'm thinking, in my mind, to be something where you have 3 council members, you have 5 Points merchants, you'd have USC and CPD police, you'd have representatives from your office, representatives from the dean's office, representatives from the Panahela group, the minority student groups, the graduate students, even landlords, to really have a working relationship to integrate, because the more we have been involved with students, the better the outcome comes all the way around for the community in general. And I hope you would, if we move formally to try to put this together, would support that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Councilman. So first, talk about campus activities for social gathering in a safe manner, particularly in the evenings, other than 5 Points. So we have campus recreation, I think, as you know, and it's open each day to offer recreation activities for students, both on-site, on campus, and off campus. We also have the fitness centers, the 2 fitness centers, the Strom Thurmond Fitness Center and the Blatt Fitness Center. They're open till 9:30 in the evenings and on weekends, as you know. This fall, we opened Russell Underground in the Russell House. It's a new multi-purpose venue that is fully equipped with high-quality audio and live streaming capabilities. It provides space for smaller venues of entertainment and student programs. Based on the size of crowds that were allowed, they've had a number of meetings. Matter of fact, they've hosted over 70 unique student organization events and meetings in the last 30 days. So, and which really, if you looked at the total number in that particular venue, it was over 6,000 attendees. So there are activities that are taking place that are on there, and there's a link to all of that in the student calendar. We also have a resident life unit in the university housing. That's a group that does programming within each particular resident hall with the students in there. They have a community education plan with education priorities, and then they've had a total of, in these type of programs in the resident halls, of a total of 704 programs to date. So that's just this semester. So there are really genuine efforts, and you probably just don't have visibility of it, for alternatives to 5 Points in the evening, and campus recreation activities, housing activities within the resident halls, and of course, and all that's taking place on campus, and that's where we are today.
Is there anything after 10 p.m.? I think, you know, what my understanding is from some of the students and the parents that I've spoken to, there's not much after 10 p.m. And so that was a question. Is there a way to have coffee shops or other activity, midnight walk-in movies in gymnasiums or something like that to give kids an alternative for the late night? These student organization meetings and stuff like that, I don't know how many have taken place either before 10 o'clock or after 10 o'clock. They're driven by student needs and student demands. So if the students have the demand and the desire to meet after 10 o'clock, I know that we can make arrangements for that.
I think some of the ideas around the ongoing committee, Daniel, I think particularly getting Issy and Hannah, student leadership, and obviously I think it was called now, when you and I were in school, it was CPU. They had all the money anyway on campus, do all the programming. There might be some pretty creative things I think we can come up with. Bob, when I was in school, they used to have big late night Russell House parties. I'm not advocating for that, but I think you heard I had a good 4 years on campus. It was a good time, but I think that type of creativity, that certainly, you know, and it's always, I think, weighed on me, as well as I know many of you, that while we're dealing with a unique challenge in a 100-year pandemic, or one we haven't seen for 100 years, I know it presses upon all of us that we want young people to obviously enjoy these very important formative years. We enjoyed them. We understand the importance of them, and just trying to bridge that gap in a meaningful way. I think it takes the constant ideation and creativity and understanding, while asking everyone to do that much more. So I think it starts with this kind of dialogue, and I think it develops in the community type approach that I think Daniel, you and maybe Will might take an active and leadership role in. And thanks for that. And thanks for the comprehensive questions, y'all, and also for the comprehensive responses, Mr. President. I see Mr. McDowell has a question as well. Rev?
Yes, Mr. President, Dr. Pearson, thank you so much for the information shared. There are just two concerns that I might have and like to express. Mr. President, you stated that there was and has been, could possibly be, some collaborative effort with campus police and CPD. How far along are we in that conversation?
I'm sorry, you said how far along have we had that conversation?
Yes, sir.
In my understanding, it's been going on the entire time I've been here as president. That's what I've been informed. But I know they're in constant communication. I know Chief Holbrook's on the line or on the call. I see his name there. Maybe he can help answer.
Reverend
Okay.
McDowell, before Chief responds, they had a meeting as recent as yesterday. Chief Holbrook, Chief Jenkins, and the public safety officials at the university. But I've been monitoring that really closely for you all, but I can defer to them to give the specifics, but there is definitely a collaboration.
Okay.
I think some of the specifics regarding the times of when USCPD would engage, maybe that can be fleshed out even more, but that is certainly happening and has been occurring, and with a little more specificity this school year due to COVID. Chief Holbrook.
Well, can I say this?
I'm sorry, Reverend McDowell.
Yeah, let me just, and the reason I raised that question is that there has been several incidences in the community where house parties and where CPD responded to that. And of course, they've been right on the spot. And the reason I asked that question is that some of the bigger house parties, the one that I experienced that is within the confines of this district, of course, was CPD was there. I did not see any collaboration with campus police, and most of the persons at this particular house party were students. So the collaboration issue is, in my estimation, very, very important as we try to slow down this virus.
Yes, sir. I'll let Chief Holbrook speak to the ordinance and the rental housing ordinance as it's being implemented with the new feature that you all certainly helped us establish as a tool. And I think there's a specific point in time where the university police get involved with that then triggers the Office of Student Conduct. I think that President Caslin referenced to also be involved. But Chief Holbrook, you want to get into that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just what I would generally say starting out is, again, our level of collaboration has been better than ever. In my 6.5 years, I think we've come an extremely long way. Since COVID hit, we've obviously made some adjustments. I think everybody has had at various times capacity issues. When the students returned, we put a plan together on one, how we may respond jointly to the issues that pop up in the entertainment district, but also in the neighborhoods. We've got 2,500 rental properties in the area surrounding the university. As we, continue to work together in the future, I think that's going to be our greatest challenge, really, is how we jointly police the ever expanding campus and off-site housing and the student population. That, commingling within long-established neighborhoods really is what pushes us to that limit. But to the president's point, we have 4 or 5 USC officers that are mingled with CPD officers Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. We have, and when I say commingled, I mean actually walking the beat with us. And that is a little change of posture that has been extremely beneficial, and it certainly is impactful with the student conduct. We have addressed house parties recently. We knew we would see an uptick with the 11 o'clock moratorium on alcohol sales. That essentially closes everything at 5 points. Since August, we have responded to 42 house parties. USCPD has responded to 11 with us, and they have also been provided 24 referrals. The house parties average from 7 as the lowest to 300 of the highest, but I would say on average it's 25 to 75. When we encounter the smaller numbers, we handle those on our own. If we, if we get large parties, they are quick to respond and certainly throw in with us. To me, we have, I think, had a very measured, reasonable response in 5 points. For example, just this weekend, we only had 1 custodial arrest, and that's highly unusual. There's been a lot of talk today, unfortunately, with with what we saw with Pavlov last night. That's that is an outlier, although a bad one. That was something that we have got to collectively, between us and the police and USCPD, we got to figure out how to better navigate that with, as with these ever-changing orders. It is a difficult situation to find ourselves in, with there being some ambiguity with, with enforcement of the orders and how we go about enforcing the orders and putting our officers in positions that I say are positioned to fail very easily, or end up being in a confrontation over something. For the most part, we get that. We definitely didn't get the memo on Pavlov's last night. For a Monday, it caught us a little bit by surprise. I can't deny that, but I think that the level of cooperation that we get is as good as I've seen it. I would also add that anytime that we have an issue that even touches the property where we have a response, USC is quick to respond to back us up and assist us, but they get pulled in a lot of different directions, just like we do, and it comes down to capacity, and we get that, and we appreciate the partnership, but it's again, I think to Mr. Duvall's point, it's something we have to continue to explore on how we might better be able to address some of the student conduct off campus.
And Chief, I would just add, and I know that the council and I will be talking with you and Chief Jenkins in executive session as well, but I think we all have to be very clear that we also are monitoring the governor's orders, and we have to abide by them and pivot when they change. And so I think, as was reported with the Pavlos situation, there was this effort to connect the dots between the change in the capacity for restaurants going up with the ability, I guess, of this congregation of students or whomever. And so I think we've all got to get our arms wrapped around what the order actually says, which is pertaining to restaurants, if a situation like that is applicable, and also recognizing that the order still refers to no gatherings of 3 or more. Our city mask ordinance is still in effect. And so we'll be talking with council about the expectations for enforcement all across the city, which I think has been consistent by our public safety officials. But at the same time, we all have to be consistent in the message and what the expectations are when we see gatherings like that. And so that we'll discuss further, but I do think that's been part of the, at least from my perspective and the chief's perspectives, we get it all day long from every angle, and we all have to be consistent with what you all want us to do as far as how to enforce things.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect point, maybe a perfect point to close on, Teresa. More often than not, we only have a few ordinances that we pass. More often than not, we are enforcing the governor's executive order and trying to make sure we do it fairly and equitably in a way that, again, allows us to get desired public health outcomes that we want, not obviously to criminalize social activity. So that requires the constant communication. I do want to restate what Chief Holbrook said. I do appreciate the work of our first responders across the board, our folks, code enforcement, fire marshals, police department, USCPD. I mean, this is a really difficult space within which to operate. And obviously, we know the points raised by Mr. Rickman and others. It's also a very difficult space for our businesses to operate in, and we want to make sure that they all remain strong and vibrant once we come out of this. Constant communication is key. Mr. President, Dr. Pearson, thank you all. That was wonderful presentation. Great data. We may already have them Madam Clerk, but make sure we share those slides with everyone else, with everyone, and just in case we don't. And I really want to thank y'all, not just for the presentation, but for the continued partnership. Let's keep growing this thing. We're going to move forward, but only if we do it together. So God bless y'all and keep up the great work. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you, Rev. Yes, sir.
Let me just say a word to Dr. Pearson. Let me thank you for that presentation. I was primarily concerned with the demographics. The demographics section of your report was right on point. And of course, I appreciate that. Now you're going to continuously update those demographics, is that right?
Sir, we update them twice weekly as we update our dashboard. So we have constant monitoring of the demographics.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
I require some effort. I mean, obviously, we see women are much smarter than men and much more likely to get tested. We know that, and the reticence of some of our African American students now they're representing minorities being tested as well. We got to do something. So that might Ed and Sam, just as African American Greek letter organizations, there might be some opportunity for some partnership there, to push the message along, get some more folks, obviously, and recognizing the randomized testing we're doing. So we might need to get some dialogue moving there. But thank y'all again, Don, Mr. President. We'll catch y'all later. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to really building up on the partnership committee between the university and the city and that particular committee. And we'll get back to you and to the councilman about that. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, that was long but very productive. Very productive. Yeah, very productive. So thank you. I'm taking my agenda off the screen. We got consent agenda?
No, sir. We actually have Mr. John Anto with an update.
Oh, John. Okay.
Yeah. Well. Yes, sir. The Executive Director and CEO of the Central Midlands Regional Transit Authority.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John, for joining us.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me. We just have a brief presentation we'd just like to share with yourself, city staff, and council on our activities at the Comet as it relates to working in partnership with the City of Columbia on some issues over the past year. I'll share my screen. Let me know if you see my screen.
We can see it.
All right, I also have Natavis Eric Harris, our Planning and Development Specialist, that will also be joining me on this presentation. First thing I wanted to talk to council about is over the course of this upcoming fiscal year, we're going to be working on downscaling Laurel and Sumter. This means that we're no longer going to have buses originate or end at this location no later than the end of 2021. It is our intention that this will still remain a bus stop, but however, it won't be a transfer location for passengers who want to change routes. We still envision using the building that we have under lease with the City of Columbia as a customer service office with restrooms 7 days a week. We do envision redirecting buses to 3 new locations that are able to facilitate transfers. That's a new super stop we've constructed at Taylor and Hardin. We have some bus space availability at Assembly and Blanding. And we're also building a bus stop at River and Lucius, which I'll talk about next, on Comet property. We've also been working in partnership with the city and the Central Midland Council of Governments to remove the federal interest from this facility, as well as the Assembly and Gervais facility. That interest, once finalized with FTA, will be reassigned to the Comet, and we'll be using that to basically purchase bus shelters that we continue to install throughout the service area, which includes the city limits. And we presently have a lease for Laurel and Sumter through June 30 of 2035. In addition, we're working with city staff to do a bus stop memorandum of understanding for the bus shelters that was constructed by the city between 1996 and 2000. A picture is shown on the slide of what those shelters look like. There's approximately 25 of them that was built in the downtown core that was for use by SCE&G back when they were operating the transit system. However, when we signed the transition agreement with the city in 2002, these shelters were not transferred to us. Since there's an expectation that these shelters are to be maintained by the Comet, with agreement with the city manager, we've been maintaining these shelters to ensure that they're kept clean, emptying the trash, pressure washing them, and making any necessary repairs in anticipation of a future MOU. And we do have a draft MOU, and I understand it's being reviewed by city attorney. We are right now in the development phase of building a bus stop in North Columbia, which is right across from the Comet. The Comet owns property directly across the street from our bus facility, and we envision using this bus stop for the bus stop Lucius, one holiday stops that are at this intersection. We want to decrease our deadhead times, and then also, which was envisioned in the ultimate master plan for that facility, build a bus training facility, which gives us the ability to train our bus operators and be able to certify them through the DMV's third-party testing program. This gives you an idea of how that bus stop would look like across the street from the Comet. It's basically at the far corner of River and Lucius. There used to be a paint shop and a body shop, which those buildings have been demolished. And this is far away from the residential areas and surrounded by a multitude of trees. And we're envisioning that this would be basically a location where passengers can catch Comet routes. I'll have Eric Harris talk about the Reimagine the Comet. Eric?
All right. Again, I'm Eric Harris. I'm the Planning and Development Specialist here with the Comet. Quickly, I just want to discuss the Reimagine the Comet. I guess you can call it our strategic effort to redesigning our network. As of right now, our network has not been redesigned since, well, in 129 years. And it was last reviewed in 2009. And so what we want to do is redesign the current network to address service deficiencies, optimize service to be more cost efficient, and also align network strategies with community needs. So when we look at ridership, the ridership alternative for our goals, what this concept addresses is anyone that desires, or any place that has a high level of density. Well, the more dense the area is, this is where we will place a route. And this also, in this concept, it prevents people outside of this coverage area from receiving service as they see fit. And you can see some of that information there on the slide as well, but the useful service in places where many people can compete for as many trips as possible. And so what we want to do is make our system as accessible as possible. But in this alternative, this will only cater to those who actually need the service. We can look at the next concept. In the coverage alternative, so believe it or not, this is the same as the map as we just last viewed on the last slide. But in this concept, we're now going from 2 routes to, from the previous slide where we had several routes, A all the way to I. In the coverage goal, my focus, what the focus is to provide service to everyone who needs it. And so obviously you see more routes here. So it's not as reliable because, you know, obviously the frequency is limited in this scenario. All right. And so what we see here is our existing network. And within our existing network, we're up to 53 routes, including USC, which went into effect on September 1st. So that's a huge accomplishment, but obviously it makes our network just that much more complicated for anyone that is new to the transit system. And you can, as you can see as well, is that we don't have many routes that are, well, we don't have any at all that are 15 minutes or better within a headway. And most of our routes are 30-minute increments to over an hour. So when we take a look at the coverage concept, so we remove all duplicative routes, and also we're decreasing the frequency of the routes because our goal is to extend our services as far as we can with the given budget. And so when you take a look at this map, you can see it, again, it looks very similar to the current network that we have. And what we want to do is to modify this as much as we can to maximize the resources, but also be practical in the way we are, I guess, addressing community needs as well. So in the next concept here, we're looking at the ridership network. And so the important thing to note is obviously there's a limited amount of routes in comparison to the other maps that we've seen, but equally this encourages more riders to want to join our network. So obviously the less convoluted it is, the more people feel encouraged throughout that process. But equally, you start to see 15-minute headways. You see a good number of 30-minute headways. Of course, we still have a few that are 60 minutes or greater because of where they're located. But for what it's worth, this is something that we want to look into, but we will have to find a way to bridge the gap between all three concepts to meet those needs, which kind of segues into the next discussion of our project timeline and where we are. So currently we are at the public outreach phase 1. So I worked really hard with our marketing and public information manager, Pam Bino-Reed, here with the comment. And I've also worked with the planning staff at the City of Columbia. And I really appreciate all your efforts up to this point. But what we want to do is engage stakeholders well, I guess I can start here. What we want to do is release the Reimagine the Comment website, which was actually done the first week in September. And the survey, well, on the website, we have an interactive design your transit simulator where you have the opportunity to use a budget. It's an imaginary budget. You can fluctuate how you want to best spend those dollars to meet the needs of, again, your community. We also have a survey where you can give us more narrow scope of what you experience on a day-to-day basis and some of those resources that you feel like we need or filling in those gaps of what we do not already provide for you.
All right. So just briefly want to talk about a future intermodal facility. As of today, the COMET has achieved about 95% of the actionable items that was spelled out in Vision 2020, which was presented to the voters of Richland County, which ultimately led to the COMET receiving its funding for a 22-year period. One of the last components of Vision 2020, as well as our current strategic plan, is to build some type of an intermodal facility that would handle intercity rail, intercity bus, and local bus in one location. We would like to identify this location along the CSX rail line that currently serves the Amtrak Silver Star route. This facility would not be a replacement to Laurel and Sumter since, as I mentioned earlier, that facility is being downsized. We envision that this would be a smaller scale station that would just focus more on intercity connections with some limited local bus service. The Council of Governments did a study in 2016 that we reviewed with this council in 2018, and since then has finalized with recommendations on how to construct an intermodal facility. While that study recommended Laurel and Sumter, we have taken a different direction to use the fundamentals of that study to help us in guiding what would an intermodal facility look like. But we're considering a different location that we're presently evaluating sites as we speak in conjunction with Amtrak. We anticipate if we were to build a facility in the next 5 to 10 years, that this reduced scale facility will cost $2 to $7 million versus a super grand station that was envisioned at a cost of $15 million. The next steps is to identify the set of locations for further study. Once Amtrak has gotten feedback from CSX on what would be perceived as allowable. We ensure that the sites that we are looking at are taking into consideration the city zoning requirements that can accommodate a transit facility. We do have interest from Amtrak, Greyhound, and Megabus that would like to serve a future intermodal facility should one be constructed in Columbia in the future. And then to just remind the council and staff what an intermodal transit center is. It's basically a multimodal building and located within a city that can bring multiple transportation options together. Buses, rail, taxis, transportation network companies, bike sharing, taxis are perfect examples of what goes to an intermodal facility. You can also have community rooms, restrooms, and convenience type shopping like convenience stores, dry cleaning, daycare, which also complements intermodal facilities. Intermodal facilities are attractive because it can basically create that grand central location where you can access all transportation choices and make it easy for residents to determine where they want to go regionally or even nationally. We envision that if it's feasible, the entire process to build an ITC can range from 3 to 10 years, depending on the size, from a cost of $3 to $14 million, depending again on the size. So basically, this is the CSX rail line. The Amtrak Silver Star basically follows the rail line that goes from Woodford. These are basically rail switching points up through Columbia and up towards Lugoff and Camden. So we envision identifying the sites that we've identified with that Amtrak is reviewing is basically between Casey and Pontiac, which is in northeastern Richland County. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions about our presentation. Should the council and staff have any about the comment.
That's very well done, both Mr. Ando and Mr. Harris. Questions for the comment team is Divine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, guys, for that presentation. It's exciting to look at plans for being able to do what you're talking about. We've talked about that a long time, that having, the Laurel Street as a transfer station sometimes, it's really outlived its usefulness. But my question mainly, John, is, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but wanted to know where you were on conversations with the county regarding future funding and the penny and other things. I mean, we're getting, I guess, within sight of when the monies will run out, and with these plans and of course just continuing the service, we need to be proactive and thinking long-term and planning. And I'm just wondering if you've had any conversations, and if so, where are those conversations?
Yes, Councilwoman Devine. This has been an important conversation that I've brought up with our board of directors, and we've definitely made it a focus for this fiscal year that we need to start engaging on a updated Vision 2030, as well as an updated Compass strategic plan. And the key focus of those two documents is to look at how do we fund the COMET beyond the expiration of the penny. We've done a financial model, and we are projecting that we'll have enough funds through fiscal year 28-29. So we have recently changed some of the officers of the board, and it is on their radar that we need to start engaging these discussions in short order. And we need to start also engaging our member agencies, which includes yourselves as the City of Columbia, Richland County, City of Forest Acres, and Lexington County, on what will be our approach on, are we going to go back to the voters to ask for additional funding, or are we going to come up with other creative strategies to generate local funding to go beyond 2029 at this point?
Thank you.
And I should also add, just for the council's awareness, as of last month, the balance that's remaining in the penny funds allocated to COMET is $115 million. Dollars.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. McDowell.
John, thank you so much. But let me ask you a question referencing ridership. When Laurel and Sumter is, when you downsize that, first of all, how do you communicate that to the ridership that's presently using those facilities?
What we're going to be doing is later on in the summertime, in the early spring, we're going to start showing and having a public outreach effort with the public on what routes are going to be assigned to Taylor and Hardin, to Assembly and Blanding, and to River and Lucius. What's going to ultimately happen, it's not going to be a disruption to the network. It's just some of the route numbers will change. I'll give you a good example. Route 6 presently goes from the Eau Claire neighborhood to Laurel and Sumter, but it bypasses River and Lucius. What will end up happening is Route 6 will end at River and Lucius, and then we will extend a route from the south, more likely like Route 42 that comes from the Millwood community, to follow what Route 6 used to do at Laurel and Sumter so that it can end at River and Lucius. Does that make sense? So in essence, the network will still remain the same. It's just that some routes that presently go to Laurel and Sumter will no longer go to Laurel and Sumter, and another route will take its place. So it's not disruptive.
Okay. Well, my particular concern is that we don't want services for the ridership to be interrupted. Now, does that mean, John, that we elongate that route, or we shorten the route?
In some cases, it'll be shortening the route, but whatever is shortened will be covered by another route being elongated.
Okay. All right.
The reimagine, so that's the phase 1. The phase 2 is the reimagine the comet piece. Then that's going to have a significant comprehensive public outreach component where we're going to have neighborhood meetings. We're going to make presentations to social service agencies to understand what are the community's needs and how the future of comet service should look like beyond this phase 1 effort that we're doing.
John, to this same point, just to put a pin in that and make sure, because you had briefed me and the staff about this, and you indicated that there had been discussions with the various elected officials. So I just want to make sure council, isn't not missing the point about Lucius and River and the actual new facility that would go there on the property that you all have. I wanted to make sure, particularly Mr. Davis, since that's his district, is in complete understanding of that.
Well,
yes, we've had conversations with Councilmember Livingston from Richland County, Councilmember Davis from the city, Senator Scott, and Representative Rutherford on the proposed facility and explaining what our envisions of how that facility would operate. And there was not any significant concerns expressed. The property is also zoned for a transit facility since when the Comet purchased it in 2005, it was envisioned that we were going to have a bus yard on both sides of the property. But since we're not going to be building a bus yard on that side, the project's been kind of rescoped.
Right.
So, Mr. Davis. I'm sorry, but you done, Mr. McDowell?
Yeah, for now, yeah.
Mr. Davis.
I'm through.
John,
yes.
Have you had the meeting with the neighborhood folks yet on Lucius?
Yes, we have. We actually joined the neighborhood association and we talked about the project that we were envisioning out there. And the only concern they brought up was they were wondering, is it going to be closer to Marlboro or is it going to be closer to River? And we said it was going to be closer to River. They also talked about the desires of a traffic light and some speed calming efforts. So we are working with SCDOT in relation to putting a traffic light at River and Lucius because it takes a significant amount of time to make that left turn onto River. And then we also been working with one of the representatives from the neighborhood association on going through the process on how we can do some speed calming activities on Lucius, perhaps stop signs or speed bumps.
John, accessibility is accessibility going to be an issue?
We are going to add additional sidewalks in the project's vicinity. Right now, there's no sidewalks on Lucius Road. So this project will add sidewalks and curb cuts. So it'll become more accessible than it is today. Presently, people are walking in the street.
Mr. Mayor, a quick question, sir.
As well.
Mr. Ando, we've got to move on here soon, but can you just speak quickly to, are we building and promoting ridership as we see the Malfunction Junction construction project get closer and closer? What, is there anything that y'all are doing to promote ridership through that corridor, which could last? Who knows how long that project's going to last?
So right now, because of COVID-19, we've kind of taken a hiatus on actually marketing the transit system because we want to focus on ensuring that people are using us for essential travel only and being safe. We do have a service plan prepared for when Malfunction Junction or Carolina Crossroads begin. That's including our Express Route 93X that goes from Newberry through Little Mountain, Ballantyne, Chapin, the Harbison area to downtown Columbia. And we're also working with SCDOT on the establishment of park and ride lots and the promotion of the Comet Van Pool program, where we're working with employers to form these vans for commuting groups. So that's kind of our proposed service plan for that project. And once that project gets kicked off, was when we'll start initiating those items. And we've established some funding for implementing those items that I just mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
SCDOT will also be providing the funding to build the park and ride lot, as well as a ride sharing app to help people basically plan their best way to commute during the construction period.
That's great.
Any other questions from Mr. Ando, Mr. Harris? All right. Thank you so much, John. And obviously, I'm not sure there are any action items, major ones, a number of minor ones, but if there are for follow-up, Teresa, make sure we get those post haste.
Yes,
and we're
sir.
definitely working in partnership with city staff on that. Sorry, Ms. Wilson.
Oh, no, thank you so much, John. Great job.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks, Mr. Harris. Appreciate y'all. All right.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Mr. Mayor, we are happy to take up the consent agenda items 3 through 19 with council.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? There's a motion to approve the consent agenda items 3 through 19. Moved by Mr. McDowell, second by Mr. Rickenman. Any questions?
What's going on, man?
All right, you better mute Ed. Move the previous question, Kurt call her off.
Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Cliff, hold on just a second. Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Hi, you better watch out, Ed. I think that the hot mic you told all of us where to go find your wallet last time, so you watch out, okay? All right, aye, ma'am.
Yeah, I found the wallet, man. What was not in there.
I'm not gonna egg you on. I'm gonna start right now.
Thank you, sir. Leave it like it is now.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So what I have items 20.
Item 20, yes, sir.
I'm gonna step aside for that one, I believe. I'm gonna recuse myself. For
Yes,
item
sir.
20. Is that the only one?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's the only one. All right, I'm gonna step off for that one, and I'll be monitoring.
Yes, sir. Erica, one of the items Ms. Devine previously recused herself from.
That'll be the next one, item 21.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Reverend McDowell, I'll just go ahead and open up the zoning planning matters for second reading. Item 20 is the annexation and zoning map amendment for 166 Riding Grove Road in Council District 4.
I move approval.
Second.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
and the mayor has recused himself.
Thank you. Item 21. You unmute, Teresa.
My apologies. 2531 Gervais Street, a zoning map and text amendment.
Is there a motion?
Move approval of item 21.
Is there a second?
Second.
The record reflecting Ms. Devine recused herself on item 21. Move the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine, Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ordinance second reading, item 22, ordinance number 2020-073, authorizing the city manager to execute a 14th amendment to the purchase agreement between the City of Columbia and Bright Myers 2001 LLC for the sale of 5.97 acres, the Capital City Stadium.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Move for approval. Second.
Second. Move and second discussion. We'll see hands with the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Item 23 is a zoning planning matter for first reading, the annexation interim comprehensive plan map amendment and interim zoning map amendment for 1.43 acre portion of 4030 West Beltline Boulevard.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Ordinance first reading, item 24, ordinance number 2020-091, authorizing the participation by the City of Columbia, South Carolina in the Recover SC Local Government Liquidity Program.
I move approval of item 24.
Is there a second? I'll second that. If there in discussion, we'll move the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Moving into a period of resolutions, item 25, resolution number R 2020-084, authorizing the purchase of 0.23 acres being a portion of the common area in Willowbrook subdivision located on the southwestern side of Summerlee Drive in Richland County. The project name is Utility Site for Sanitary Sewer and Storm Drainage Improvements along Summerlee Drive in our
Approval.
Move.
I move approval, I'm sure there's Mr. Duval and Ms. McDowell. I couldn't hear. Who seconded that motion? Is that you, Sam?
Aye. Yeah.
All right. We'll move the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Item 26, resolution number R 2020-089, authorizing the city manager to execute a sublease agreement with Celia Saxon Shopping Center LLC for the lease of Suite
So
1.
move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? We'll move to the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Other matters, item 27, council is asked to approve a request to add 3 additional streetlights on White Street.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Why did that tickle you so much, Sam? I wonder.
Well, seriously, this is, it's very seldom that we have this on the agenda. First, I've seen one in quite a while. And,
Good deal.
You'd be surprised at the number of dark spots we do have in some areas.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased that something like this has really come before us.
Good deal. All right. We'll move to the previous question. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. We have appointments now, the Affordable Housing Task Force, Midlands Housing Alliance, Planning Commission, and I believe Ashley is on the line to assist.
Ashley.
Yes. Ashley, if you could help me, because my Zoom in is not working. And so can you help me? Just before, Ashley will tell you guys, as we appointed the Affordable Housing Task Force members, additional members added based on needing to address a couple needs, and so those folks have to be officially appointed. So Ashley, can you tell us who those are?
Yes, that we have Allison. Well, do you want the full list, Councilwoman Devine?
Whatever's easier for you. If you have just the ones that need to be appointed, I think there's maybe four or five.
Yeah. Okay, great. We have Allison Terracio from Richland County Council, Dr. Brian P. Grady, South Carolina State House Finance and Development Authority, Dylan Gunnels, and Regina Williams.
And then I think also, I apologize, I can look it up. Susan McPherson has gotten someone, she has stepped down for another appointee. Do you have his name?
Chris.
Councilwoman Devine. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Erica. No, go ahead.
Ashley, do you have the full list now?
I do. I see Susan McPherson's name, and then there's also Chris Zimmer.
That's it, Chris Zimmer.
We also need to get Ivory Matthews, Tanya Isaac, Shayla Riley, Mary Louise Resch, Gregory Sprouse, added to that list along with Regina Williams if she wasn't mentioned.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would move approval of all those names.
Second.
Yes, sir.
May I ask, do we have council representatives, city council representatives?
Me and Sam, and you are welcome. Yes,
right.
if you want to join us. Yeah.
You're all right. You fine. Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure.
Tamika, can I ask a question real quick, Tamika?
Sure.
Does the county have a affordable housing group that they're putting together?
I don't know for sure. And I know that Councilwoman Terratio is asked her to serve as liaison on ours, and she has been. She actually did text me indicating that she wanted to form a similar task force, but that there were several members from our task force that she'd like to serve on theirs as well. And so she broached the idea of possibly us having a joint task force. I've not spoken back with her regarding that request. So we've not pursued that. I do think, and TK can tell me whether or not that's something we can add to executive session. I think from legal, there might be a couple just considerations for city council about having a joint task force that might, it might hinder us to move as quickly and swiftly as we'd like to on what we've already been working on. But I'll defer to TK to maybe advise us in executive session if we want to discuss that. But to answer your question, Councilman Brennan, we're trying to work collaboratively with them as we can. I just need a little bit more communication from them, but I'm not sure that they understand kind of where we are and whether or not it's feasible for us to actually have a joint city and county task force.
Perfect. Thanks for leading that charge.
Good deal. Good deal. So that was a motion, and we have all those names and Madam Clerk, Ashley?
We do.
Okay.
They're all listed.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
In discussion? We'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you.
Mayor and council, next up we have the Midlands Housing Alliance and the appointment of Ms. Jean Denman to represent the Downtown Coalition of Neighborhoods, Midlands Housing Alliance.
So move.
Second.
Second.
All right. Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Next, we have the appointments for the Planning Commission. The memo has been updated to reflect the district representation as well as the last members that were appointed, including Mr. Mason Harp. So with everything updated, there are 2 vacancies available to appoint individuals to that. And there's one note, I know I'm not going to name the applicants, but for one of them, it says not listed. We looked again, it wasn't listed on GIS, the address, but it's actually outside of city limits, but that is one's for the work and one's for the home. So, but other than that, everything is updated according to what's needed for representation for each district. And the current roster of members is updated as well.
All right. All right. All right. So we good?
Well, we need somebody from District 1 and District 2, and that would give all districts 2 members, 1 outside.
Are y'all?
Yeah.
Are y'all ready?
No. Ashley, if you could and would, excuse me, Daniel, if you could, let me hear the names of those presently serving on the Planning Commission.
Absolutely. Currently, it's Joel Tupper, James Frost II, Isabel Mandel, Mason Harp, April James, Latrell Hartz, and Harris Cone.
All right. Now, presently, we have someone for District 2 already.
Currently, we have Latrell Hartz. Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, in response to Daniel's point, I agree with that. I was hesitant to do it, but the last person that I appointed, I think, has resigned. So I'd like to go with that suggestion to come back with another name.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. All right. So no action on PC today, right?
Correct.
It's important. It's important we get one fully constituted. So if we can maybe make it a point to get some folks to Ashley before the next meeting, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd
So
be great.
the only person we need to suggest, of course, is from District 1. Is that correct?
Hold.
District 1 and District 2.
We have someone in District 2.
You gotta have 2.
You can get 2. Ed. You can get 2. I'll tell you can have 2.
All right.
It's gonna come back with 3.
If you want to give it away, you know.
I don't want to give it away because what I'd like to do is just defer it to our next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get her some good names, y'all, so we can act on the next meeting.
Okay.
A whole lot of good stuff in the pipeline. All right. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Erica, and appreciate you. All right. We have any reports to or from committee? Something we want to send there? Daniel?
I just want to get the council's blessing of trying to put together this collaborative committee that I mentioned earlier with the city, involving both the university from an admin, but also a student-led organization and council.
How you want to style it? How you want to style it, Daniel? What do you want to name? I mean, what would you
call it? The town.
The committee. I think you probably chaired every social committee when you were on campus. So make it the social life committee. Now with this collaborative effort, and we got as Teresa and Skip mentioned earlier, we got a lot of good interaction, but we're talking policy level. Let's just think creatively about how we keep a good dialogue going.
Yeah, and having the opportunity where we have both the administration, student representatives from the different organizations, but neighborhood and landlord and police and all working together, I think it will make a real difference, and I think it's really worth pursuing because you've got representatives from different on-campus groups, off-campus groups, landlords. I think having 3 members of council along with the dean of students, a representative from the president's office, maybe even somebody from the board representing, would be, ideal, along with, Panhellenic. There's several other groups, and obviously, as we mentioned before, both police chiefs. So and obviously the fire as well, because I think that way, if we get a representative of all those organizations as we continue to evolve, and today was hearing that I didn't realize the number as high as it was, 80+% live off campus. I think it's more and more important that we close those gaps of communication.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Duval.
This sounds like a town and gown committee, and we have tried for many times over the last few years to establish a town and gown committee. That's a nationwide organization that represents cities that have universities in or near it. There's a very active one up at Clemson. And if we're going to establish something, let's look at the requirements for the town and gown organization and see if we can meet those requirements if we're going to establish a committee.
I think they're officially headquartered at Clemson now. Actually, I think that's the official national headquarters. Yeah, so they're very. It should be a fountain of information. So let's take a look at that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and stand up our ad hoc committee and see if we can shape something around that. Teresa, if you and your staff can give Daniel and Will and whoever else wants to serve just some help around the structure. I think we can probably roll off a whole lot of folks who need to be involved. So let's work towards that. Okay. That's a motion by Mr. Rickenman. I'm sorry, Mr. Duval. You want to serve too, Dan? You want to serve too, Howard?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I spoke to the Clemson Town and Gown organization twice at their annual banquet while I was working at the Municipal Association, and they refused to invite me back after I did.
You charged them too much.
When I said in my remarks that their municipal court was illegal. I got a call the next day from courts administration, and they asked me why I said that. And I explained, and lo and behold, they agreed with me. And but I never got invited back after that.
I think we are a member, Mr. Duvall, of the Town and Gown. You know, there's been some, you know, stops and starts with the activity, but I think at the time that we paid membership, it was with a collaboration with the university. I don't know if Missy Gentry is on to confirm whether paid members or if the staff person that we assigned is still working on that, but can tidy all that up and incorporate it into the discussions of the ad hoc committee. I guess I would ask, is this meant to be an ad hoc committee right now because of the concerns regarding COVID, or you're suggesting that this be an ongoing marching committee? And obviously right now the concerns are about COVID.
Ongoing.
Okay.
Ms. Wilson, I am on, and yes, we are still participants through our staff liaison.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a motion from Mr. Rickenman. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? We'll move the previous question. Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Vernon,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other reports or referrals? If not, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone teed up for public input?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to note that there was a wonderful report from Krista and her team and other team members as well, as Mr. Brennan had requested, for Economic and Community Development Committee, the City of Columbia Development Review Process Overview. That went really well, and we did introduce our business liaison at the time. He's now in place, and Mr. Brennan asked us to come back in 60 days or so with some metrics to track some of the various changes that are underway in that development review process. So we're working on that. And we also had another update from Office of Business Opportunities during that committee meeting as well, Mr. Davis, continuing that same discussion from before with many of the small minority women business enterprise activities that are ongoing. And I think your committee also has met since then, Mr. Mayor.
Sure have. Yeah, sure have. Okay. I'm not sure if someone tried to contribute there, but thank you, Teresa.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk.
We do not have any callers on the line, Mayor Benjamin, and we have not received any emails.
Is there a motion, Mr. Duval?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move we go into executive session for receipt of legal advice related to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to South Carolina Code 30-4-70A2 COVID-19 business license, hospitality tax, and Saluda Greenway. A discussion of negotiations, incidents, proposed contractual arrangements pursuant to 30-4-70A2 Bull Street Garages, Landmark, 2221 Divine, Farrell Road property, and public art. Discussions of negotiations, instance, proposed purchase of property pursuant to 70A2 Adeline Drive. Discussion of matters related to proposed location or expansion of services to encourage location or expansion of industries or other businesses pursuant to 70A2 tax incentives for affordable housing projects.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move the previous question. Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye, thank you.